It was nearly 5 years ago that I walked into the doctor's surgery and I complained about not wanting to get out of bed, which was happening more and more, not wanting to go to work, not wanting to see what happened tomorrow, not wanting to see anyone. And this wasn't a new thing, but it was something that I certainly deflected for a long time. On that day, the doctor ran me through the tests. I ticked boxes. I was as honest as I possibly could be. And the doctor told me that I had depression and anxiety. I can remember that moment as clear as day, that the word depression especially just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I almost thought that, that's not right, but I couldn't understand why she would think that. And as the preceding time went by, I was put on medication. I came to the realization that I needed more help than what I was portraying to the outside world, but mainly to the people that I loved, my friends, my family. That was a difficult thing to portray to them. So I put my finger on that day that I went into the doctor's surgery. But realistically, it was for many years prior to that. But I suppose when you're a bit younger, I certainly didn't shirk away at a good time. But feeling lows, feeling depressed, wasn't something I was willing to open up to and look deep enough into why that was so. So that's why I think it's a good starting point, that day in the doctor's surgery. And from then on, I've lived, in my own words, a very up and down being. And from this 5-year block, from that day until I suppose right now, is something that I want to learn from, and it's something that I want to put into action, not only for myself, but more so for others in whether it's a similar boat or still unsure. I do want to use myself as a helping tool in any way I can. I think for a lot of the time, you go up and down on the spot, one step forward, one step back, 2 forward, 2 back. There was never a sense of making too much headway without that back step. But the sure signs that I was getting deeper and deeper into a tougher way of being, is it affected me in a way that I feel I couldn't control myself. My lows were so low that I would just neglect the world. I wouldn't get out of bed for days. I wouldn't talk to anyone, whether that was my mum, my siblings, let alone replying to, messages and the like. I tended to drop off commitments that I had, as that would just let me drop further into a self-indulgent state. But decisions along the way, decisions that you make every day, were just always the wrong one, the one that would almost torment you into being not yourself, whether that was drinking, gambling, deceiving, those sorts of things, which I have always held in high regard, were slipping away, and I could see it I could see it all unfolding. So my depressive state and my negative way of being was turning into a destructive thing, not just for myself, but it was hurting other people around me. And that's what hit me a lot. That certainly did. I think I was always happy to hurt myself, but I didn't want to hurt others, and that was becoming a real factor. Yeah, it really was. And sure, it wasn't an overnight fix, but I think that was a bit of a stepping stone to sort of sitting here today. And as we sort of fast forward through time, I think the last sort of 2 years have been like nothing I could have imagined in terms of myself being and how that would look. I think I was more willing to talk, and I was more willing to try and get to the bottom of what was making me such a depressed person, which was a start, but it was only a start. And I saw multiple counsellors, and in more recent times psychiatrists, to try and have things aligned that inside my head, that it's easier said than done. But it certainly wasn't always about trying to get better. Life goes on. Everyone does have things to do, their priorities, which I fully respected. But I think I do believe I have lived a very selfish stretch of life in wanting certain things that have taken others out of their comfort zones. Without fully committing to the cause. And I think, we sit here now. I think I sit here in a really positive space to be able to portray this video to you. But it was not long ago, that I sat in a psych ward at the Alfred for a relatively short length of time, but it certainly didn't seem that way. After effectively being put on a suicide watch by my family, and that certainly didn't affect me as much then and there, because it didn't matter where I woke up or where I was or what I was doing. I did feel doomed. I had accepted that I would be doomed in the way that one way or another I would find the end of my being by this, and it didn't worry me. I didn't see any light, and I felt through that 5-year block and the preceding time as a preliminary period. I think that was my peak point, if that's a thing. I think that probably went for about 3 or 4 months that I felt doomed, which was a pretty hopeless thought, as you can imagine. The how and why and the thought of ending one's life is pretty grim. And I came back to that. I was happy to distinguish myself, but having the thought of family and friends dealing with grief and emotion that they had no part in and had only done the best and hoped for the best, and provided support, so much support, was really the only thing that kept my head above water. And being in that self-indulgent state, just with that little man, that little devil on the shoulder, telling you to do the wrong thing, you're wasting your time, you're a dud, you're a failure, you're nothing. That wasn't far away from anything positive that would trickle through my mind. And I think, touching back on just being in the psych ward, it wasn't out of being completely mentally unstable. It was more about being in a safe place, and a place where people knew I would be out of harm's way and be able to get the right care if necessary. And seeing people that didn't have any support and didn't have any, in some cases, any family, and you could see how their life was spiraling in the wrong direction because they had nothing to live for. I felt something there that I had more to live for by living through my family, mainly, and seeing my nieces and nephews grow up. That's a real driving point for me. And just having friends and family coming to see me, sending me bucket loads of food, and which I didn't need per se, but that was interesting. Seeing other people almost just waiting for a letter to pop through the door, or a well-wisher along the way. I did feel for them, as much as I was trying to concentrate on being my own friend in there. So that was certainly my big drive, and as I was only in there for a week or so, but it felt like, and looking back at it now, it felt like an eternity, really. Just to see from the day the night that I went in to the day that I left, I'd really, I'd advanced to some degree of having seen things that made me put my being in perspective, and not perhaps wanting to waste what I have in front of me. And I needed to make better decisions. I needed to make better decisions overall, but I needed to make better decisions to stay alive. And that's what it came down to. No matter how deep and how bad I had made situations with friends and family, that was the underlining issue, was I needed to stay alive. Which sounds a bit surreal, and even does today, because I can look back on that period of my life with I think great happiness that I'm here today in a much more positive frame of mind, and I'm determined to make something of what I am. I'm 29 years of age, but I feel like I have lived through my 20s of just a downhill skier, just happy to indulge in the good times, which certainly hasn't been a problem, but not so much the other way. And then when those aspects of whether it's drinking too much or losing all your dough, although that's not a blaming of depression, it does just all snowball in a way. So that's just part of making the poor choices and tormenting myself. And